So let's go ahead and get started. As I mentioned, we are Vbout. We are a marketing automation software platform, and we do a lot of content marketing on our own. So this course that we're teaching today is part of a larger online course that we are doing on digital marketing. So if you're interested in learning more, content marketing is just one piece of a whole wide variety of tools and tactics that you can use in digital marketing, and they're all interrelated in some way. So for instance, your user design and the way you design your images and your imagery is also very important for your content, but we're not going to touch on that today. We touch on that in another piece of this full course that we're doing. So today what we're really going to talk about is how to plan out and develop really great content marketing that can serve your business goals. A little about me. So I started with Vbout 6 months ago, and I am the marketing director for the company. And in addition to pushing out a lot of this great content, we also wanted to let everyone know that if you are interested in marketing automation tools, we have just recently launched a new free package that you can download and start using right away. And if you have any questions about that, any questions in general while we're doing this, please go ahead and write into the chat box and we'll get back to you. So if no one else has anything to say at the moment, then we will go ahead and get started. This was put together actually by several members of our team. I wanted to introduce Richard Falla, who is our founder and CEO. Has also been instrumental in putting together a lot of this coursework. So it's not just coming from the perspective of the marketing team, but we're entrepreneurs and we teach a lot of this content as a small business who is also doing our marketing and growing. Just to go over the content for the day, so we're gonna define what is content marketing. We're gonna go through the beginning stages of strategy and planning, and then we're gonna discuss a lot of the challenges that people face with content marketing, and we'll look at a couple brands and companies who are doing a really great job with their content that you can benchmark and look at and think of different ways to serve your business needs. So the importance of content marketing, we've heard it for years. Content is king. It's the way for businesses to grow. Inbound marketing is more important than traditional sales. So, it's very complicated though in this space and environment because everyone seems to be doing content marketing. But as you can see from this quote here, only 38% of people believe that they're actually effective at it. There's still a lot of questions on how to do it in the best way possible. So when we look at what the actual definition of content is, some people say content marketing is kind of a useless term in that everything we do in marketing is content and everything that we put out is content. Yes, it's a very broad range of activities and practices that any company can use. But if we look at it in this definition, it's really defined as something that brings meaningful insights, perspectives, and best practices that are valuable to a specific audience. So what content marketing really is something that's valuable to your audience. And its aim is really to get new clients or retain your existing clients and strengthen those relationships you have with them. Another point that Ann Handley has from Marketing Profs is that content marketing really is the way an organization creates or shares a story. So it could be a wide variety of stories. It could be about yourself. It could be about your products or your services. But what it really isn't is a warmed over press release served as a blog post. So this is something to really think about. It's not just news about your company. It's content that should be engaging your audience and giving them something valuable. And we'll discuss more what those things could be. So The main thing you're gonna hear us repeat over and over in this webinar is that it has to speak to your target market. So one of the keys to content marketing in the beginning planning stages is that you have to understand what your target market needs and wants. It has to be informative and valuable for them, and then also testing. That's another thing that you're going to hear come up a lot. So let's get right into the planning and development stages. A lot of people, because content marketing is such a broad area, they don't even know where to get started. So as I've already mentioned, knowing your target audience and how to engage them is important. But even before that, you have to know what your objective is. What is your main business goal that your content should be serving? Are you looking to get more sales? Are you needing to educate about a new trend or a segment? For instance, one example from Vbout is that we are moving into some new markets with marketing automation software, and in some of these countries they're not familiar with this technology. So for that strategy, we actually have to do a lot more education on what our tools are, what this entire new technology is. Whereas in the United States, where everybody knows about marketing automation, maybe our strategy more is just geared towards closing sales. So after you've determined your objective, write your mission statement. Make it clear, concise, but make it achievable. Then the next step is developing that persona. So the persona is where you really get into understanding who your customer is, understanding what will be useful to them, how to engage them, where they hang out, everything about how to reach the customer that you need and want. So once you've got those three things, then you can determine the pillar of content, which is another way of just giving your story a purpose and a framework. So every story will have it'll have a beginning, middle, and an end, but when you understand the goal and the person you're speaking to, it's much easier to figure out how to do that. So after you've discovered your purpose and the framework, then the next step is selecting the channels where you are going to be posting and sharing. This is where things can get really challenging for a lot of businesses. We're in a very competitive environment. There's so much content out there. It's very challenging to get seen. So you have to think about where, but also how often, when you're posting. And this is where the testing, you really have to test. You have to test what's working, what your audience is paying attention to. And then you have to go back to your original strategy, and you have to look at the original plan and be willing to change it and innovate and try different things until you're really getting the results that you want to see. There's a lot of benefits to effective planning, but some that you may not have thought of is that, it'll make it feel less challenging as you look at this, this very big area to tackle. But the other things is that it'll help you justify spending in your budget on content marketing, and it'll make it easier to track how much the content is actually giving back. So, looking at the return on your investment, on your time and your resources, it'll be easier to see if it's really working and if it's worth it to continue doing. So now that we've looked at some of the planning, let's talk about the different types of content. So now that you've determined your main objective and the target audience, now is the time that you need to think about what you're actually going to write about. And a lot of people get stuck in this area. And there are things you need to consider. Not only what will be valuable to your persona and your market, you have to think about also your resources and your budget and the competitive environment that you're in. If you're in an environment where there's so much competition online, you may have to, instead of looking at what your competition is doing, you always need to look at what your competition is doing, but you might have to work harder to be different, to be unique, and come up with something just maybe even controversial. We had a speaker the other day at our meetup who said, don't be shy about, using controversial content and developing interesting things. So your environment will also determine what type of content you're going to produce. So this chart here that you're looking at it's very general. And as you can see, blogging, this was in 2015 that this data was taken, and blogging was very important. Visual coming close in second, videos and podcasting. I'd be very curious to see how this changes for next year, but keep in mind these are also very general stats, and depending on your industry, these numbers are going to change. So it's a really good idea to do your own research and to look into that. So moving right along to the next slide. Now deciding what to write about. So your resources. Do you have people to do videos if you want to do video? Do you have writers on hand? And other than looking at resources, what is going to serve your purpose best? So if you are in the B2C space and you're an e-commerce platform selling clothing, Pinterest might be better for you than, say, LinkedIn. So these are things you have to think about. And then, of course, the testing, as we mentioned. Think about what sticks. Well, look into what sticks. At Vbout, what we did is we tested a few different types of content. We looked at what our competitors were doing. We read up on, what businesses find to be most useful, and because we're in a B2B context. And it was white papers, it was infographics and all of these things. But for us personally, what we saw resonated with our audience and target the most was educational content. So that's why we do a lot more webinars and other things at this stage. But this came through trials and testing. Here is an example. So when we first set out with looking at the different types of content, I just mentioned e-papers, e-books, white papers, and you have things like infographics. One thing that we did on the team was I like to divide types of content into 4 different categories. So you have the short form, which includes blog posts, infographics, slides. So these things have less writing. They might have more graphics like the infographic you see here. So this is really, it does take a lot of research. An infographic, you do need to have somebody who's very good at putting together the images and putting it together. But this is a short form, and they are popular. They look really great on some places like Pinterest and Instagram. So these are things to consider. Slides are also very good. SlideShare is very popular. It's now owned by LinkedIn, and it's not as competitive as some other spaces, and it's really great if you're in a B2B space. So other things to consider are the next type of content is a long form. So if you read up on what works really well in B2B content marketing, you will see a lot of people talk about ebooks, case studies, white papers, and they are great for collecting leads. There's a whole lead generation machine that works around a white paper and ebook. It starts with setting up a landing page, and then it goes into producing really great in-depth content, a study that a lot of companies can really learn from. And over time, it can also help you build relationships. It can help any company to show that they're a real expert in a topic that they are talking about. So it helps to build your reputation and increase trust with your clients and your followers. And they're really good in a B2B context. They are much more difficult to put together because they take a lot of research, a lot of writing, and you do need a lot more resources to do them. So that's one thing to consider. Some people actually outsource producing those to companies. Other types of content, the next one is videos, recordings, and multimedia. So in certain industries, and this is where maybe for B2C companies, this type of content makes more sense. You can do podcasts, which are becoming extremely popular, and it's not as crowded a space. And you can find a lot of these on YouTube or iTunes if you want to see examples. There are also video tutorials, which are really great for certain kinds of B2C products, like the beauty bloggers that you see. You'll also see a lot for electronics, and people love to watch these videos and learn. Beauty bloggers, actually, that touches on another form of marketing, actually, which are engaging with influencers. So this could be two things achieved in one, really. Another type of content is visual. So visual is one, well, all content has to be visual at this point. Even if you're doing a blog entry or slide share or anything, it all has to be visual. But then you have content that is purely visual. You have photo blogging, you have Pinterest and Instagram, which are also just photographs, and they can be used really, really well for many different kinds of companies, not just B2C anymore, but B2B. So I've put up here, this is an example of our Instagram page for Vbout, which, believe it or not, has helped us generate some leads. And you can see that we have over 1,200 followers. So here we are proving that, places like Instagram are not just for B2C anymore. B2B companies are using it really well, and you should really put some thought into, beautifully designed photos if you want to tackle one of these. And then other ones are memes and short videos. I also put these in the visual category. And honestly, I don't think you can underestimate the popularity of Snapchat or viral shareable memes. People love them, and some of the best brands and B2B companies are using these really well. So these are other forms of content to consider. After you've decided what kind of content you have the resources to produce and the content that is going to help your business meet its goals, the next most challenging part is going to be the channel selection. And this gets into where to post, how often, and distribution. And I've heard some people say that you should actually dedicate as much time to your distribution as you do to producing content. Now, of course, this is going to depend on your company, how far your reach is already, and what you're trying to achieve. But these are things to keep in mind. Distribution is perhaps going to be one of the most challenging parts of your content marketing strategies. So, of course, you have to find out where the people you want to talk to are hanging out online. So where are they? What kind of content do they like? What are they engaging with? And that'll help you determine what to say. Now, most marketers are, of course, using the big four. This is LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. But these are very crowded, noisy spaces. Everybody's on there. They're the catch-all sites, and it's really, really hard to get noticed if you're not a well-known brand. If you're like a small startup or company like Vbout, what we found is that we just weren't getting a lot of engagement or attention, even if the content was very good. We were getting feedback on some of the content we were producing that it was very good, and we couldn't figure out at first why we weren't getting traction. So one thing that we did and that other companies can do that works well is to look for more niche sites or industry community sites. And here you can find kind of where your tribe is hanging out. Some examples for us are Inbound.org or G2 Crowd or Product Hunt. So on some of these websites, you find tech startups and companies that are producing products, software products, or inbound marketers, and you get much higher engagement and an ability to engage and find a community and build your reputation. And then eventually you can gain more followers as well on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Another thing to try are to go straight to relevant blogs and bloggers and engage with influencers. So I mentioned the beauty bloggers a few minutes ago, but you can also find that a lot of A lot of influencers have their own blogs that a lot of people follow, and if you can, guest blog for them, or if you can have them guest blog for you, this is another great way to increase your audience and to get people to see your content. So one thing to look at is the different social media platforms. They're going to be different in terms of importance for whether you're B2C or B2B company. Here, this data is from 2015, and this is going to continue changing. As I mentioned before, Pinterest, Instagram, these are both platforms that are doing a great job now on learning how to monetize from their business models, and B2B companies are waking up and realizing this is also a place where they can engage companies, and also, yeah, for the e-commerce and even the B2C companies, Pinterest and Instagram now have things like buyable pins and more ads. So these numbers might change, but as is the case with digital marketing, you just have to stay on top of the trends and pay attention. As you can see, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, these are the most important ones. And again, depending on your particular niche market, it can be different for you. So that's why analytics is so important in everything that you do. So in addition to these social media channels, distribution continues from there and goes into paid ads. So boosted ads, which you can do on Facebook, you can do on Twitter. LinkedIn has places for ads. You can put ads everywhere online. You can also use sites like Quora and Reddit to link back to topics and to your website. You can work on press releases, so trying to engage with the media and get some things out into the news. This is harder, especially if you're just starting and you're a new company and nobody knows about you and you don't have any great stories to tell yet. Press releases can be a bit harder to get, but there are video channels, there's your own email marketing once you've built up your listserv. So you have a lot of different options to distribute your content. It can get very confusing and a bit overwhelming to actually know where to focus your energies. As a result, there is this, it's called a Peso model that's been developed, and it's been developed by PR and social media guru Jeannie Dietrichs. And basically, Peso stands for paid, earned, shared, and owned. And when we think about distribution in this context, it really helps you to develop a framework and a strategy for moving forward based on your own company goals, and then you can adapt them accordingly. So one example, so just to define paid, earned, shared, and owned, we'll get into the model in the next slide. But if you're a company who really needs to build credibility, you might require a different approach than a company that's trying to nurture prospects. And we can look at that here on the next slide. So this is the actual model that is set up. And again, here all the circles are the same size, but they can be different according to what your particular needs are. If you need to gain credibility, say if you're a nonprofit organization and maybe there was a scandal or for some reason you need to gain more credibility in your community, your publicity, your media relations, blogger relations, this circle of earned media or shared media might be bigger because paid media those are basically the ads that you're posting and you're paying for. These are the ones that do almost nothing for your credibility. No one really trusts paid ads anymore, or if it's clear that it's been sponsored by a company, it's not going to do much to build your trust. It might get your content seen by people. It might, help to increase your visibility, but it's not going to do much for your credibility. So looking at these four circles and thinking about this model will help you to determine the best way to kind of get through this sort of overwhelming series of distribution channels and help keep a neat plan, an organized way of looking at what's working and maybe what should matter more than something else. You can read up more on it. There's a lot written about the Peso model, but we just wanted to introduce it here to think about. So again, as I said, it's to help just shape your strategies and to navigate this environment. And yeah, and then also consider too that different parts of the Peso model can be more effective at different parts of the buyer's journey and decision-making process. So this is something, a model that might also change from when somebody is brand new to your content, so they're a potential lead versus someone who's already a client or a customer. So after you've determined then the different ways you'll tackle creating the content and creating your distribution channel plan, it's always good to keep your goals in mind. And what we talk about mostly here in this webinar is B2B, because at Vbout, from our experience, we are in the B2B space, and that's what we're sharing mostly. But if you'll notice from this chart here, B2C and B2B are not that different in terms of the goals they're trying to achieve with their content marketing. What might be different here is perhaps the importance. So here we have it listed in from a study that was done in 2016, and it's ranked in order of importance. And they're pretty much, sales is very high, customer retention, loyalty, brand awareness, lead generation, upselling, and these are all goals to keep in mind while you're doing your content marketing, and you can set your own. So once the goals are set, this can help take you to the next step, which is then where we get into the analytics and the tracking. In order to track how effective your content marketing is, you have to determine your metrics that you want to measure. And we call these here, we call them success metrics. So your success metrics are the activities that you are seeing from your audience and from your followers and users that are helping to reach those goals, the goals we talked about on the previous slide. So here's another, it's also from a study done by Marketing Land in 2015, 2016, and it was in order of importance. So website traffic in a B2B context was the most important success metrics. As soon as companies could see that the website traffic was going up, they would generally see that they'd get more leads and more sales, and so to them website traffic was the most important. And then the next was the sales lead quality, and this is when we look into lead scoring and how high quality those leads that are being generated are. This is really important because you can talk about website traffic and you can be getting 10,000 people visiting your website with your content, but if they're not in your target market, if they are not the persona that you're trying to reach and your potential customer, you're still not going to see the kind of results that you want with your content marketing. So website traffic is important, but who is actually coming to your website and the quality of those sales leads is also really, really important. So you drill down further, the time spent on the website, that's also important. Inbound links, subscriber growth. So for you as a marketer or company, it's really important to sit down and determine what exactly you want to measure with your analytics in order to make sure that you're reaching those goals and that you're getting the right kind of traffic and it's going to meet your business objectives. So now, when we look at analytics a little bit deeper, as I mentioned, in a B2C context, it's going to be a little bit different, but there will be a lot of similarities. Additional items that you can look at that weren't mentioned on the previous slide can be engagement, your referral sources, geography. So if you're getting a lot of visits from geographic areas that aren't part of your target or are just not going to benefit from your services, that could be something to look at. Social shares, your repeat customers, your customer loyalty. These are all different success metrics that you can measure in order to tweak and analyze how successful you're being with your content. So now we get into the content marketing challenges. So if you notice, there was a quote I put on the landing page when you registered for this webinar, and the quote was something that said, it was something along the lines of, more content has been produced from 2003 to today than from the beginning of time. I love that quote because it really makes it so clear how challenging it is to get your content seen and to reach your audience. There's so much content being produced every day, every minute, and most marketers feel that they don't have enough time. So 69% say they lack time and 55% believe that they don't have enough, which is somewhat true. There's an argument you can always make with quality versus quantity, and everyone keeps saying you need to focus on quality, not quantity. It's a mixture of the two, of course. So you need to produce enough to keep your audience engaged and keep them coming back, or they're just going to start ignoring you, but it also has to be very high quality. So two things. You have to capture their interest. And then if you don't have a strategy, that's also another challenge. So the most common challenges that people face, in addition to the ones we just mentioned, are lack of budget or the lack of buy-in or vision. This is actually a really big one. Selling the idea of content marketing has been really challenging for a lot of marketers because it's been hard to determine the return on investment for content. But that's why these tracking and analytics are so important. It's much easier to determine how much it's actually impacting the bottom line for any business. Other challenges are lack of knowledge, training, and lack of integration across marketing. That's a really challenging one as well. And finding trained content marketing professionals. These are all different challenges that people are facing, and there are different ways that you can tackle these. So we had a speaker, Drew Neiser, who came the other day, and he gave us some great advice on how any company can help to address these. So one of the things, as we've already mentioned, planning and focus, but also, don't set unrealistic goals. One of the things that he said that really had an impact on the room and for me personally was that to keep in mind that only 1/3 of your content will be seen and will engage only 2/3 of your audience. And I was a bit floored by this because that also means that 2/3 of the content you're producing is kind of useless. I mean, you don't want to call it useless, but it's just not going to be seen, and that's how it is, and you have to accept this as a content marketer. So setting realistic goals will also keep things on track. It'll keep your content marketing team from getting too discouraged, but also don't have a one-size-fits-all mentality. So we talked earlier about the big four social media channels. Only posting on those channels and doing what everyone else in your industry or your competitors are doing is a one-size-fits-all mentality. You really have to think how to be innovative and creative, and you definitely have to constantly test and see how it's doing. And another important, really important point to make is about inconsistency. This is a very easy place where people can get tripped up, and you want to consistently post at roughly the same rhythm and time, and you definitely have to be very consistent with your distribution. In the beginning, it'll probably feel like you're not reaching anyone and nobody's seeing your content at all, but if you're consistent with it and you do aggressively continue, it will slowly grow over time. And this is also part of setting the realistic goals. Growing your content marketing and developing your following, it's a slow process. It is a slow process. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take months to determine what sticks with your audience and the right channels for distribution and everything you need to be doing. So definitely don't think that just creating great content is going to be enough to get attention, or even if it is enough to get attention, it might not be enough to get more sales and to grow your business. So Drew also presented 5 ways to fix your content marketing problems. So some of the things we just discussed. One thing he recommended was a lot about focus. So he talked to us a lot about keeping focus. And in the beginning, he says it's a good idea to have one meaningful theme at a time that's relevant to your target. So instead of thinking, and this is something that we've done here at Vbout as well, you know, in the beginning when we started developing all this content and I started going through, we were doing topics that were all over the place, you know, doing an infographic here, a case study on a company over here, an ebook on user design and website design over here. But there wasn't really a cohesive strategy to all of the content we were producing. And now that we're doing these educational webinars and these educational slides, we're developing out an entire online course for marketing that's building on top of it, of each lesson. And we're finding that the engagement is much higher because, you know, one leads into another, and people are interested in how the campaign is going to continue and then what's coming next. Creating memorable content is another word of advice. So using a mixture of entertainment, inspiration, and selling is what Drew recommended. People, when we're online, yes, even if you're in a B2B space, you know, I think even we at Vbout fall into this trap sometimes. We get into thinking of selling, 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 selling. But people are also online because they're looking for entertainment or they're looking for inspiration. So even if you're in a B2B context, definitely try to think of how to bring that into your content. And if you're in B2C, for sure, you should be thinking about how to inspire and entertain. Try to use humor, try to use, you know, great quotes, and just anything. Quality. So this is something I brought up earlier. You know, you really have to focus on quality over quantity, especially if you're a small company with just 1 or 2 people who can do your content marketing. It's much better to have 1 blog post a week or maybe 1 webinar a month if it's going to be very, very high quality, because your reputation also depends on this. You want to put out, you know, content that is going to engage your audience, but it's also going to look good on your brand and your reputation. And you don't want to just churn out what everyone else is doing or things that aren't well researched or interesting. So, and make sure that it's aligned with your business objectives. Keep a close eye on those success metrics and test and adjust constantly as you go along. Here we have another quote from Drew. 35 to 70% of your content is going to be irrelevant to your target. That's something to keep in mind as well. And other items to test and refine, you know, beyond the channels and the subject matter, you know, headlines, formats, the text, the images, the videos. As I mentioned, we've done other courses on web design, on user design, and so there's a lot of elements that go into why your content may be successful that may have nothing to do with actually what's written there. It could be the way your website's designed as well. But we have a whole nother course that's focused on that, and if you want more information on that, just let me know. So another thing that that Drew suggested as well was adding media, and this is something that was brought up in the Peso model as well. You know, look into paid ads on Google or Facebook or different channels, also through PR, events, tryout events, email, website exposure, any different way to get your content seen. In the beginning, when you're a new company and if you're just starting out, in-person events, you know, meetup events might even be useful. Definitely at Vbout, we have a very large and growing meetup community that helps to get our content seen by a lot of people. So kind of thinking outside of the digital box is also a good idea as well. And just try a variety and keep testing. Just keep testing, but also even test your paid ads. So one thing we've learned along the way, and you can definitely read up on this, there's plenty of sources online, the way that your paid ads are designed, the image itself, the lines that you're using in the paid ad, all of these have an impact on whether people are going to click on that ad and then land on your website or your landing page. And these can all be tested. These can all be tested with software and with analytics. Now that we've gone through basically all of the steps that you can take on developing successful content marketing plan, we're just going to run through a few quick great examples of companies that are doing this in different channels and for different purposes. So TED is one that I love dearly, and a lot of people know TED. I mean, they have been viewed over 1 billion times. This is a company that has really dominated great videos and long-form videos as their content marketing and are probably doing it better than anyone else. Really wonderful and educational, but also entertaining. There's a whole mixture of things you can get out of TED. Another one to check out is Audience Bloom. They're a small content social media marketing company, and they're doing really, really well with their earned media. They get constantly mentioned in Entrepreneur, the Wall Street Journal, Huffington Post. And if you look, their blogs are quite cutting edge. Their content is really interesting, and it's in the digital marketing sphere, and almost anybody in digital marketing is doing content. So, you know, you really should look at Audience Bloom and go, you know, why is their content getting attention in this space that's very crowded? So it's a really great example, and you can see their website here, and they have also showing here at the bottom all these great sites that are always mentioning them. They use video, they use a mixture of entertainment and education, and it's great. GoPro is a really wonderful example of a company that's doing a great job with imagery and user-generated content. So this is another thing we didn't really touch on in this content marketing presentation, but user-generated content. If you can get your own followers and users to share their own pictures and images, it's really wonderful. One, because it's free to you and it uses less of your resources, and it engages your audience a lot more. GoPro's doing a really great job with that, but their product also speaks to being really great for that. So here's some of what they're doing, and it's all user generated. IBM's a great one. You know, they're really, really good at knowing what is important and what matters to their audience. So if you want to see a company that's producing really relevant content that people love, IBM is one to look into. And they're also using a lot of different channels you wouldn't think B2B companies would be successful on. So Instagram and some other places. They're a really good one to look at. Yeah. So we're now at the end, and here we've put some tools that you can use for your content marketing to get started. There's some free tools just for getting organized, things we like to use or some companies like to use, like Trello, Evernote, Dropbox, really great for collaborating with teams. Vbout is really great for also using the software to amplify your content. You also have some paid sites that you can go to. Jira, which is for project management. Contently, which I'm sure a lot of people have heard of, is another site where you can get content written. And then they have some here for videos and all sorts of different channels, formats, or tools that you may be needing. So just to summarize everything we've said about content today, I would say that the most important thing for anyone is to develop your strategy and lay out your plan, really understand your target persona, where they're going, but also to be really aware of the environment and your competition, because this will matter a lot for your distribution and your ability to be seen. So in addition to developing the content that's relevant and current, really put a lot of energy into getting on the right channels and getting influencers. And I mean, I know here at Vbout, just to use our example as well, you know, we had the writing in place, we had the content writing in place, and I come from a background of communications and creative writing and storytelling and research, and you know, we were producing the content fine and just nobody was seeing it. And so once we stepped up the efforts onto guest blogging and getting other people to guest blog for us and going into some of these niche industry websites that we mentioned, then we realized things were getting a lot more traction. And as always, we track everything, we analyze it, and we look deeply into what is driving the traffic back to our website. And we stay on top of our competition as well and what they're doing. And we don't try to copy them. We definitely try to be different, but we put a lot of energy into staying aware of what they're doing too. And that is it. So we have another webinar coming up on June 1st. And as I mentioned, we're doing a whole course of these digital marketing classes, and this one is going to be the first installment of the entire course. So it's Intro to Digital Marketing, and it's great for beginners, or if you just want a refresher on maybe some of the new trends and tools that are out there. So yeah, now that we've come to the end, let's see, does anyone have any questions or any?
Yes, I have 4 quick questions.
All right.
Hopefully my connection is making it through to you, Audrey.
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, great. So I had some guests actually email me directly some questions.
Okay.
So the first question I have here is how fast can I see results from my content marketing?
Yeah.
So you know, I can jump in on the answer for that, considering I've been you know, heavily involved in analytics.
Yeah, for sure.
So you know, every post that we put out, we make sure that we optimize the SEO. We make sure that it's included automatically in our sitemap, and then we try to kind of stay on top of our Google Webmaster Tools to see if there are any errors, if everything is indexed properly, etc. So we have the immediate effect after we do a release that usually lives on for 2 days. I can see traffic coming in for 2 days heavily, and then organically from SEO, you know, I've been noticing posts that are older than 4 months are getting great visibility and organic reach. So I would say as an average, take as an average two different metrics. One of them is the immediate effect, which could be the first few days. And then the long-term effect on SEO, if everything's optimized properly, it could take probably around 6 months for you to start seeing results.
Yeah.
Um,
From the landing pages.
So landing pages for our blog posts, even the small blog posts, like I write a lot on our blog for troubleshooting, shooting articles and things. So I might be talking on maybe bounce rates, maybe bounce codes, something very technical. And because our audience are marketers, they really look into that stuff. And the good thing is that not only it's a resource for our support, it also gains good organic reach. So SEO kicks us back in our results, and we've been getting leads just from our technical side of the blog, which is tucked in on the bottom of our website.
Yeah. I think
Yeah, I mean,
on this note too, something else important to mention is that your results are also going to depend on what activities you're doing. So the average post on some social media sites is the length, how long it lasts, and is about 3 to 6 minutes. If you think about Twitter and some of the other feeds, they move so quickly that if all you're doing is posting to Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn a couple times a week, it might take you a lot longer to see any traction from your activities because the average post is going to last 6 minutes.
exactly.
Whereas with these landing pages and some other things, activities, they last a lot longer. As you mentioned, 6 or 8 months down the road, you'll see some, more results.
Great. So that's the first one, which leads technically to the second part, second question. Somebody asked, should I do PPC to my product, or should I write content? I can't invest in both. I only have a limited budget. So my answer to that would be, and you can back me up on this, but technically PPC, once you shut it down, your campaign is dead. Spending time on content, developing content will live on forever, which the long effect of SEO and ranking. So I would say find a combination of both. PPC should be the distribution channel, but shouldn't substitute your actually whole content marketing strategy.
Yeah.
Right. Two more questions, unless you want to add something to that.
No.
So people also ask, all right, so should I outsource my content to a company that have no idea what I'm doing?
It's always a good one.
That's, I think there's a fine line between you fine-tuning or kind of crafting your tone. Everybody talks about tone, but tone is not that complicated. For us, we're really friendly, we're educational, we have great support. So this is our tone of voice, and we have a great product. So for us to kind of do these educational webinars where we're educating people on the new trends, getting people into this digital marketing age easily without having to look at it as this complicated mechanism to gain customers. This is our tone. So anybody who's gonna be producing content, they should consider first making sure with whoever they're outsourcing this to, they understand the tone, and they keep one or two great resources that work with them long term. The first couple of blog articles might not be spot on, but then as they pick up your brand, they pick up your tone, they might be able to help you out, and actual things they produce might be a little bit more relevant to you. A quick thing that I suggest, I mean, a lot of people are limited even on outsourcing. I've been using my phone a lot to kind of do speech to text. Google have this great thing they have a keyboard with a great tool. So I've been actually reciting what I want to write on, and it's picking up probably 90% accuracy on my topic. So
Really?
if you want to do it yourself, yeah, it's great. It's great. So I open my notes on my notes app on my Android, and I use my mic text speech to text, and I start kind of talking talking into my phone in the middle of
Yeah.
the event or something to add up to my articles. Um, yeah,
On,
so
on this note, though, if I can add one thing, there are a lot of services out there. I probably wouldn't go to sites like Fiverr or some of those sites to look for good content writers, but there are more and more startups and companies out there who have a whole pool of freelancers, and what you might find are not necessarily people who, know your brand voice as well as somebody within your company, but you might find some people who are industry experts within your particular field or your niche market. You could find somebody who has specific experience in writing about a topic that you need. So it is something to consider, and it's getting more affordable as more of these services are popping up. So it's worth looking into if you can't do the content yourself in-house. It is something that is very time consuming, and you don't want to throw together crappy content. I mean, invest a little bit in high quality, or don't do it would be my suggestions. You don't want to put out bad content.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I think we're compiling, so I don't know if you announced this before, but we're compiling a nice directory of content marketers that you can go and reach out to in case you want to build up your blog and you want to build up your content for your sales funnel if you're building up a funnel. So, we're putting together a nice resource in a directory. So if you know, or if you are a writer, or you know somebody who wants to be included in that directory, please, reach out to us. I think we're going to have around probably 300 good resources we're going to vet out, and that's going to be a good way for you to get started if you're looking for a good resource on content writing or outsourcing.
Yeah.
I have one more, but I think that somebody else asked on the thread.
Yeah, we have a question about the KPIs.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is the question?
What would be performance indicators for content marketing? Um, well, we touched on that when we talked about the success metrics and your business goals. So I think for most people with the content, they want to increase leads or increase sales at the end. So Richard, did you want to answer this?
Yeah, sure. So, I think depending on how long is your sales funnel, if people convert, if you're selling a product, a physical product, the sales funnel is probably shorter, in which case the way for you to measure content might be a little bit easier. So I would do two things. First, your blog has to have obviously its own dedicated URLs and links, and potentially tagging those links. So when you pull up your analytics reports, you can see the traffic coming in on your blog, how long people are spending. Or they're spending 5 seconds and leaving. That means your content is not really that great. Using using heat maps is a great tool for you to see how far down the articles people are scrolling. If you're not getting enough scroll downs, that could be an indicator that you probably should fine-tune your content. The amount of shares that people are sharing your content around, it could be also a good indicator. So if you have these share icons on your blog, they could help, although people might not everybody share content, but and comments. So how many comments you have, and of course the most important KPI is your conversion pixel. So what is your conversion pixel for the blog? If you want your blog to be the top of the funnel, your KPI should be how much conversion to subscribers have you had, and then long term, how many of those subscribers converted into purchase. So this could be two different connected KPIs, and again, depending on how complicated is your funnel, you can set up the metrics accordingly. We're probably going to do a funnel session anyways, so we can discuss these in more depth.
Yeah, we're going to have a session just on analytics at some point as well. Yeah.
Any other questions, or should I touch up on my last one? I think we're pretty much close to the end of the hour
Yeah,
session.
one more, just the last one, and then.
Anybody else from the chat, or should I go to my email questions, the one that emailed me?
Yeah, no other questions from the chat.
Okay, great. So I got a question, how personal should I make my content? I've seen some big companies build up their brand by making their content very personal. What do you suggest? So that was actually a good topic.
Yeah, that's a really, really good topic. I was actually just thinking about this yesterday. Um, it's your branding. It's what you want to, what message you want to get out there, but also what will work for you. So sometimes it's hard to change that. One example would be like Apple. Apple's a company that has a really easy personal story that they can tell. They had the CEO and and it's an inspirational story and these inspirational products, and they can do it really well. But then you have Microsoft, and for Microsoft to tell a personal story with their content, people can't really get excited around it, and they don't they don't want to hear it. So one thing is it depends on who you are as a brand, as a company. Think of your brand as a persona as well. So don't just do your target as a persona, but think of your brand as a persona and what it stands for. And does that persona have an interesting story to tell, a personal story that's going to inspire people? Then I would consider, telling personal stories. If not, I would think of a different angle. Yeah.
And again, whatever you're selling, whether it's a software or a product or a service, I mean, people produce things. There's a story behind the people who produce these things. There are struggles. There are trial and errors. There are mistakes that people make. So I think everybody will relate to these mistakes generally. So admitting that you've made a mistake and you fine-tuned it to make it better, or something didn't work out and you made it better, and reflecting that in your writing doesn't hurt. And because people will read through the article that it's actually the passion that brought up the topic versus just somebody want to write content. I think that's the value of adding a personal touch to it. And yeah, so I think find a balance. Definitely put a personal touch. Share your experiences and your troubles and how you made it better, and you will definitely be better off than just being monotone without personality.
Yeah. And in terms of personal branding and content, then of course, if you're going to go that route, to make sure to also use a lot of imagery of your team, pictures of the people on your team, and bring that human element out with a lot of the images as well, not just the stories.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. This is all the questions I have. This was a great session. I really enjoyed it. Thank you, Audrey,
Right.
and everybody on the team who put this together. And thank you for our attendees for also attending. We'll make sure this is available to you as a slide as well as video in our blog. And hopefully we'll see you on our next webinar. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.